Improving your sim racing happens when you take an honest look at your own technique and give it a good shake. If you can't seem to gain any more time, or if you're starting to feel too comfortable, that just means you're now overdue for one of those shake-ups. This video is all about one of the many little mind tricks I use to get faster times and consistency, and I'm certain that if you adopt this, you'll be better off too. Whenever I play catch up to slower drivers, whether it's because I've had a rubbish qualifying or I'm in a reverse grid event, time and time again it's the smallest, wimpiest corners where I can gain the most ground on. This tells me that the small corners may be getting overlooked a bit. They might be small, but the amount of time you can find through them is huge. By small corners, I'm referring to most of the tight first or second gear corners and chicanes. All the examples in this video are from Snetterton Circuit, which has multiple of these types of corners. Tight corners like this are often made safer and faster if you introduce a small amount of balancing throttle into them. Balancing throttle is the term I use for when you introduce a small amount of power through a turn just to maintain your car's speed and steady its balance as you make the corner. It's not coasting off the throttle, which is losing speed, nor is it distinctly accelerating, which is gaining speed. It's just a mild amount of throttle that holds your speed. The amount can vary, but most of the time it's somewhere between 10% and 50% throttle. So, what I observe about slower drivers is that they drop to lower apex speeds in the middle of these tight turns and complexes. Yeah, I know, duh. But let me explain. If you're slowing down more than I am during these slow sections, it's usually because you've gone around that corner time and time again and found that if you go any faster, it feels unsafe. If your car is nervous, so are you, and this means that you'll be slower than your true potential. Alternatively, you may find that the car maybe doesn't want to make the turn if you enter a particular corner any quicker than you are doing now. But don't be fooled. We lose count of ways that the fastest guys can somehow corner harder than it seems possible to do. So keep an open mind to trying new things. Race cars are full of hidden speed. So here's the so-called mind game that I use to this day to try and trick myself into finding extra speed. And if you're at the lower end of the pace scale particularly, it could be the tip you need to take chunks out of your times. In slow first and second gear corners, listen closely to your engine revs and challenge yourself to keep the engine tone as high as you can while still making the turn. Or, to put it another way, a bit like the film Speed, imagine you've got a bomb on board and it'll explode if you drop below, say, 5,000 RPM or something. So you need to keep the engine revs from dropping below that imaginary mark. Now, I'm not saying watch your rev counter. Having a specific number in mind is not the point. But what this imagined danger will do is it will trick you into experimenting with the throttle earlier than you normally might in order to stop those engine revs falling too much and setting off the imaginary bomb and killing you and your passenger, Keanu Reeves. By focusing on the sound of the engine rather than the visuals and force feedback exclusively, your right foot has an alternative signal with which to react, and for many this could be their new favourite marker. It might sound stupid, but it absolutely works to help me scratch the surface for a little bit more speed by encouraging me to introduce and hold throttle a moment earlier than the lap before until I've found the new limit. I'll also start playing this mental minigame during a race if I've lost my aggression and the pace is slowing down. It's a good way to refocus and get back up to pace. It's also essential to use your lap delta display when you're doing this, so that you can see how the increase in average speed gains you time. The whole point of this engine revs explodey bomb trick is to get you to experiment and see if you can carry a touch more speed at the apex of certain corners than you have been up until now, by framing it in a fun way without any technical jargon. Instead, you're just challenging yourself to see if you can hold the engine note a little higher each time until you find your new limit. Just like how trail braking gives you the ability to go faster coming into a corner, balancing throttle can help you travel faster in the middle of a corner and set you up well for putting the power down on exit. The stabilising effect of a subtle engine load you introduce can also give you more confidence. Here's some more explanation as to why a little throttle goes such a long way. If you try to go through these corners at speed without the use of balancing throttle, it's both slower and trickier, because as you continue to lose speed, the weight of the car is still mostly right over the nose, making the lightened back end of the car feel nervous. At low speeds with little downforce to help you, it can feel really loose. In most race cars there's a crucial component called the rear diff that changes the way the rear of the car feels depending on whether or not throttle is being applied and how much. If you time some balancing throttle just before you're about to clip the apex, you'll find that the rear grips the track and balances the car, making you feel safer and more stable throughout this slow turn. Not only that, but instead of scrubbing off too much of that valuable apex speed as you turn, you'll hold your speed where it is, and although it's often just for a moment, it will still raise your average speed throughout those corners when compared to other drivers around you that don't do this. Average speed isn't the flashiest of things to think about, but if you want to go faster, it's the most important thing of all. Here's one way to visualize the benefit that balancing throttle has on your speed throughout slow corners. Normally I see people decelerate quickly to meet the corner, then once at the apex they'll start to accelerate quickly again out of the turn. With balancing throttle, this dip in speed as you approach the apex and hit it can be cut out entirely with no drawback. It's free lap time, there for the taking, but only if you know to look for it. If you try this for the first time, you will initially be fighting your instincts to start easing throttle in much earlier than you might normally. If you use a little bit too much power, the car will either run wide on exit or you'll spin, depends on the type of car being used. So if either of that happens, calm it down a bit and try again with a little bit less gusto next lap. If you manage to apply the ideal amount of throttle with good timing, you will carry a couple of miles per hour faster apex speed without having changed your racing line at all. With practice, you will apply it widely and accurately, and other drivers will be looking at you wondering how you're doing it. So give the imaginary engine rev exploding bomb scenario trick a go and see if it helps you. It's a fun confidence aid which is intended to give your habits a bit of a shake up, and it always works for me when I think I've gotten the best time I can. There's always a little more to be found in the slower sections using this trick. I've been doing sim racing for many years and I'll still use this technique in practice and during races. Let me know if this method works on you. I always love to hear when people have found my takes helpful, so pop a like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video and you'll be helping me in turn. Thanks for watching and see you again.